Okay, Arvind Sanger is managing partner, Geosphere Capital Management. He's joining us now to take some questions. Arvind, good morning. Good to have you with us here. Thanks very much. Just a quick word on, I'm going to start with what's happening here in India, and then we'll go circle back to the globe and the bigger picture. But markets here looking very strong. I mean, the deal activity super strong, equity capital market activity super strong, fundraising, blocks, I mean, you name it. And of course, the action in mid caps, small caps, micro caps, mini caps, just gangbusters. Arvind, what's going on?
Well, I think that, the earnings season was pretty solid. I think Indian economy is, we had a very strong GDP number come out for the last quarter. I think, people are feeling optimistic, and India continues to be one of the bright spots in the global pantheon of, emerging markets and developed markets in terms of the economic growth fundamentals. So I think there's a lot that's going on in India that is positive, and people are willing to pay for that. Given that growth is hard to find around the world, India is one of the bright stars.
Okay, India is one of the bright stars, given that growth is hard to find along the world. That's interesting because a lot of the traction has been in the broader markets, right? I mean, it's a 26% rally that the mid-cap index has seen this year. That's phenomenal compared to our own standards and global peers. So what is your own thesis of how to approach it? What are the sectors that you like? Which are the pockets of value?
So, we have, fortunately had a larger proportion of our portfolio in mid and small cap names. And that just is because we were finding value in different sectors, everything from, auto-related ancillary to companies in hospitality or, other industries. So I don't think there's a big overarching theme, but we see the overarching thing is that, both domestic industrial activity and domestic, consumption are benefiting in this economic recovery. But, having said all that, let's keep in mind, and there are many sectors we can talk about. The one sector that we're missing is IT, which I know you were talking about a little earlier. I'm not sure if we are jumping on that bandwagon yet, but, domestic healthcare, we like that sector. So there's many pockets where we are finding a lot of opportunities, but, it's mostly bottom up rather than making big macro calls. But I would say that the one fly in the ointment is what we're seeing from a, inflation standpoint. We're keeping a close eye on that because that, could be a bit of a headwind. We have financials too, but, everything is going to be somewhat impacted by what's happening with inflation and what that might mean for RBI policy. That's something to keep an eye on.
Hi, Arvind. Good morning. I recall when you visited us here in the studio, you were telling us that power-related themes look interesting here in India, and that's played out perfectly well as well. So kudos on that call. But what about this rising crude oil prices? That's becoming a bit of a risk, right? And it ties in with that inflation worry, given that the monsoon has been subpar out here. How do you view that? That's a risk, right?
Yeah, so when I talk about inflation, the two things that we are most concerned about, one is that, the August rainfall was extremely poor, and therefore it's setting up to, maybe having some food inflation flow through, in the second, in the second half of the fiscal year for India. That could be a bit of a challenge. I think crude is something to keep an eye on because, Brent is approaching $90. It's not there yet. But, if China keeps stimulating, there's a risk that could also continue to help crude, and that could start to become a challenge. So I think those are the two major challenges on the inflation front for India. And so that's the thing that we would, keep an eye on because, there's always risk factors. But so far, the market's climbing this wall of worry without worrying too much about these issues. But it's something that could come to the fore as the market goes higher.
One of the things, Arvind, I don't know if you've kind of looked at it closely, is power, which is coming back into sharp focus here. And I'm not talking about renewables, which have been which have gotten all the fancy and attention, but I'm talking about good old thermal power. So there is talk that maybe we're going to see another cycle of ordering in this space because we need the capacity. Power demand has been hitting new highs every day. I mean, much ahead of Power Ministry's own projections or market estimates, etc. The cycle may not be as large as the 10 years or 15 years ago. You had that ultra mega power projects, but a smaller cycle, but a cycle nevertheless. Any thoughts at all, Arvind?
Yeah, well, I think there's a good news and there's a bad news. The good news is that power demand is strong and is continuing to climb, and the companies that are in that sector are going to do well. Obviously, there's a lot of government involvement in the sector, so we have to be a little careful because anytime government sees pressure on factors that might hurt inflation, there's always some tendency to get involved in a way that could hurt earnings outlook. But I think the power shortages are real. That's the good news from a company standpoint. The bad news from an India standpoint is India is overinvested, or not overinvested, but invested a lot in renewables, particularly in solar. That is great for maybe 9 a.m. to 4 p.m., but that is terrible at 6, 7, 8 in the evening. So what you're likely to face, in our opinion, in the next year or two, is some challenges. And again, this could be crimp some of the industrial and consumer growth story would be that you get power shortages and brownouts and blackouts, and that'll cause industry to have to use more diesel to operate plants. So that's the risk. But I think the government is now starting to realize that they have to reinvest or push investment even in thermal power plants. Renewables alone are not going to solve the problem because for a 24/7 base load is very important. And baseload natural gas is too expensive. Nuclear takes a long time, and therefore we are likely to see much more emphasis reemerge on building new capacity on the coal-fired power plant, frankly.
In fact, just one final question. Since we're talking about a lot of these new age sectors, right? Whether it's renewable energy, whether it's electric vehicles, there's lots happening in defense. Railways are picking up in a big way. Within the consumption space, there's gaming, for example, which is suddenly catching everyone's interest. In some of these new age themes, so to speak, anything that you like?
Well, one of the auto component companies that we like is basically focusing a lot on global EV. We own one of the companies that is big in plastic recycling. So we definitely believe that there are pockets here where things are very interesting. We don't own a pure solar or wind or renewable operator, but we are looking at several of them and trying to find the right mix there. But I think that the reality is that conventional energy is going to be as much in demand, but I think some of the new age opportunities are definitely something that if you take a 2, 3, 4 year view, there's going to be a lot to do there, and we are very interested in that area.
Okay, all right, Arvind, thanks a lot for joining in. Have a great day. And thanks for speaking to CNBC-TV18. Let's slip into a quick break. On the other side, our list of top 10 stocks is lined up. Lots of stocks in the news this morning, so don't go anywhere.